9. Rosalind Keough. When Rosalind Keough began working as a stripper at high-end clubs in Manhattan, she was amazed by the amount of money she was making, ranging from $3,000 to $10,000 per night. However, she walked away with just a portion of her earnings after tipping out other staff members and handing over 40% of the club after every shift. Things got even worse after the 2008 recession hit, and customers were no longer dropping big bucks on the dancers. She took a break from the industry, but shortly after her return in 2012, she met Samantha Barbash and Karina Pascucci. The trio conspired to lure men to certain strip clubs where they had an arrangement with the staff. Once there, they served the victim a drug-laced cocktail that caused him to lose awareness of his surroundings without falling unconscious. The women then ran thousands, and sometimes even tens of thousands of dollars worth of charges on the victim's credit card. A lot of men kept silent about the fraud, most likely out of embarrassment and fear of ruining their marriages or jobs. But one customer, Dr. Zayad Yunan, spoke up after being taken for $135,000. He disputed the charges to his card, and when the strip club sued him back for the full amount, he fought back. By then, law enforcement had caught on to the scam and were conducting their own undercover investigation. 4 women were ultimately charged in connection with the crimes. Keough and Barbash received 5 years of probation, and Pascucci was sentenced to 16 weekends in jail. Interestingly, they all took plea deals that spared them from having to pay any of the money back. 8. Georgette Thorogood. William Smith's problems were just beginning when security agents found a gun in his bag at Fort Lauderdale Hollywood Airport in 1998. He was put in a federal holding center on a weapons charge, while detectives carried out an intense investigation into his background. This led them to evidence of multiple other crimes, including bank robberies, written plans to hijack a flight to Cuba, and the murder of a 22-year-old exotic dancer named Georgette Thorogood. Smith, a known pimp, and Thorogood had fled New Mexico with the woman's 1-year-old daughter 2 months earlier in an SUV stolen from the criminal's wife. At the time, Smith was out on bond while awaiting trial for the murder of a rival pimp. Thorogood was last seen alive when the 3 of them checked into a hotel in Memphis, Tennessee a few days later. The next day, Smith dropped the baby off at a professional babysitter's home and never returned to pick her up. He abandoned the stolen SUV at a Nashville parking garage, where it was found with bloodstains and a broken windshield from a bullet impact. Shortly before Smith's arrest in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Thorogood's body was discovered in a roadside ditch in Mississippi just south of Memphis. As authorities looked further into the case, they discovered that Smith had a history of crimes dating back to his teenage years. Records showed that he'd used dozens of aliases and at least 10 social security numbers and birth dates. His nearly lifelong crime spree finally came to an end when he was convicted of Thorogood's murder and sentenced to life without parole. 7. Felicia Johnson. In April 2022, 24-year-old Felicia Johnson visited Houston from her hometown of San Diego, California. Hoping to make some money while she was there, she auditioned at a gentleman's club for a job as a dancer. The young woman was last seen getting into a man's car outside the club, and she was never seen or heard from again. Police began investigating the case after Felicia's bloody phone and purse turned up in a local park. They found evidence that she'd gone to the residence of 28-year-old Chukwuebuka Nwabodo. The two had been talking on Snapchat, and he allegedly agreed to pay Felicia $500 for an intimate encounter. Detectives discovered that Nwabodo had recently performed some disturbing Google searches, including "What does beach do to blood?" and "How to get away with murder." He also purchased a saw, trash bags, towels, and a flashlight shortly after her disappearance. Felicia's blood was found in his apartment and car, along with latex gloves, a kitchen knife, and a shovel. Investigators also found photos of what looked like a mutilated woman and 3 other bodies on Nwabodo's phone. They arrested him in connection with Felicia's disappearance, but didn't have enough evidence to hold him at the time, and he was set free. He's been on the run ever since, and Felicia's body has yet to be recovered. 6. Ashley Barrett. 26-year-old Ashley Barrett, an exotic dancer at the VIP Gentleman's Club, was caught handing out business cards for her nearby workplace and offering prostitution services by an employee of the the Bottle Cap Lounge in Key West, Florida. According to local officials, when they contacted her employer, she got upset and was arrested for threatening her colleagues with a knife. A few hours later, police received another call about an incident involving Barrett. When they arrived at the scene, 3 of her fellow dancers told officers that the woman was drunk and had swung a hair-straightening iron at them. She allegedly told one dancer that she planned to play an evil game, saying, "I'm going to get you when you least expect it." One of the victims was sleeping when they were attacked. Police arrested Barrett under Florida's Marchman Act, which allows authorities to intervene in certain cases when someone needs help for substance abuse and won't get it on their own. In the end, she was charged with aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. 5. Amber Williamson. After finishing her shift at a strip club in Houston, Texas in 2016, former assistant school principal Amber Williamson barreled into a police car at 90 miles per hour. The 40-year-old was driving on the wrong side of the road in Pearland when she slammed on the brakes less than 2 seconds before the impact, killing rookie officer Andy Equipana. At the time, Amber was out on bail for a drug charge and she was homeless. A few years before the crash, she completed a 2-year probation sentence for a previous DUI case. It's unclear exactly how and why the mother of two's life fell apart in the years leading up to the fatal crash, but it appears as though addiction played a role. Amber's blood alcohol level tested at 0.162, roughly twice the legal limit, and police found a partially consumed bottle of vodka in her car. They ultimately charged her with intoxication manslaughter for the crime. At her trial, the prosecution presented surveillance footage of Amber drinking and allegedly stumbling around at her workplace earlier that night. She was found guilty of the charge and pleaded for leniency at her sentencing, expressing remorse for her actions and asking the judge to spare her from prison time and give her probation. It was wishful thinking for the troubled woman, who received a 32-year prison sentence. 4. Michelle Linehan. 23-year-old Michelle Linehan met a lonely fisherman named Kent LePink in 1994 while working as a dancer at the Great Alaskan Bush Company in Anchorage. They started dating, and she soon quit her job and moved into his house. The couple got engaged, even though LePink was just one of at least 3 men she was involved with throughout their relationship. At one point, another man she had a romantic past with, John Carlin III, moved in with them as a roommate. LePink was shot dead in Hope, Alaska in 1996. Authorities theorized that Linehan and Carlin conspired to murder him in order to benefit from his $1 million life insurance policy, only to learn that LePink had removed Linehan from the policy just days before his death. He'd also written a letter to his parents, telling them that if anything bad happened to him, Linehan, Carlin, or Linehan's third lover Scott Hilk were likely responsible. Although Michelle was visiting Hilk in California at the time of LePink's murder, police suspected that she had masterminded the crime and used her feminine wiles to persuade Carlin to do her dirty work. However, with the lack of evidence tying the suspects to the case, years went by before they were able to make any arrests. Authorities revisited the cold case in 2005 when they interviewed Carlin's son, who was a minor at the time of the murder and had been prevented from talking to police by his dad. He gave information tying his father and Linehan to the murder weapon, along with other damning details. Linehan and Carlin were charged with LePink's murder in 2007. Both their convictions would eventually be overturned, but Carlin died in prison. Many still believe Linehan had something to do with LePink's death, but prosecutors declined to pursue another trial. 3. Lee Grace Doherty. In 2011, 29-year-old Lee Grace Doherty took some time off from her job as a stripper in Cacao Beach, Florida, to go on a week-long crime spree with her brothers, 26-year-old Dylan and 21-year-old Ryan, who was on house arrest at the time. After stealing a car from Ryan's pregnant girlfriend and loading it with guns, the siblings destroyed their cell phones, cut off Ryan's ankle monitoring device, and tossed it out the window. On that first day alone, they shot at a cop during a high-speed chase and robbed a bank. News of the crime spree went viral as federal authorities issued a nationwide bulletin about the trio. While Lee Grace quickly became the country's most wanted female fugitive, she also made headlines for some raunchy photos that were leaked to the media. Authorities caught up with the Dohertys in Colorado. a 20-mile high-speed chase ensued as the siblings made a last-ditch effort to evade custody. They eventually ran over some spike traps that were laid out ahead of them, bringing the pursuit to an end. Lee Grace fired shots at an officer during the ordeal and was shot in the leg when he returned fire. The siblings faced dozens of state and federal charges. They were prosecuted in 3 states and each received a 35-year federal prison sentence. 2. Toni Anderson. Toni Anderson's last text message before she disappeared in 2017 was a message to a friend about how she was getting pulled over by police for the 2nd time recently. The 20-year-old Missouri State University student had just finished her shift as an erotic dancer and hostess at a gentleman's club and was on her way to meet a pal. However, she never reached her destination, all communication went dead, and her vehicle was nowhere to be found, leading some to believe that she had been kidnapped. Some speculated that the police might even be involved, since her last known interaction was with an officer. Suspicions were heightened when the Kansas City Police Department denied having any contact with the young woman. It also led to theories that someone posing as a cop had done something horrible to Toni. A spokesperson later came forward and said that they mistakenly denied the encounter because it wasn't logged in their system. After making an illegal lane change, a highway patrol officer issued Toni a verbal warning and directed her to a nearby gas station since she was low on fuel. He watched her pull into the gas station, and that was the last anyone saw of her. Some people believe that Toni was alive and well, and that she'd staged her disappearance as a way to gain money and fame. Unfortunately, they were wrong. Nearly 3 months after she vanished, and after an extensive search of the area failed to turn up any sign of her, Toni's vehicle was pulled from the Missouri River with her body inside. Her death was ruled an accident due to hypothermia and drowning, and the medical examiner determined that alcohol and cocaine were contributing factors. Toni's mother, Liz, criticized the officer who pulled her over for not arresting her for being under the influence. Others have wondered the same thing after seeing body cam footage of Toni acting confused and scattered. In its response, the police department stood by the officer's decision to let Toni go with a warning, saying that he made an appropriate decision based on the information he had at the time. 1. Breen Basarich. In early 2019, a savvy internet user traced some disturbing Tumblr posts about plans to commit a mass shooting to a 31-year-old exotic dancer named Breen Basarich. Posing under the username Taking Lives, she allegedly wrote about how she fantasized about spraying bullets at people with an assault rifle in a crowded public place. The concerned Tumblr user contacted law enforcement in Polk County, Florida. Following an investigation, they charged Basarich with written threat to kill or injure. According to an arrest affidavit, when a fellow Tumblr user asked if her expressions were just fantasies and if she really owned any guns, she replied that she was getting an AR soonish. Shortly after Basarich's arrest, Heavy.com reported that in one post, she expressed her love and support for convicted murderer Dylan Roof. He was responsible for massacring 9 African-American churchgoers in 2015. When commenters expressed shock and outrage, she said that she was well aware of what he'd done and that she adored him. Unfortunately, the outcome of the case is unclear. Would you rather catch your partner working as a stripper behind your back, or have your wallet cleaned out after having a few too many drinks at a strip club during a wild night out? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.